Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am Sandy Shellis, and with my partner Jennifer Hines. And Jennifer, it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to see you tonight. Yeah,
It's
how
great
are
to see
you?
you too, Sandy. I'm so excited about our show tonight. So we're
Yeah, me
busting
too.
apart the COP27, aren't we? We're busting it apart.
Yeah, I mean, I did my shows on it, but it's over. So it's time for you and
hmm
I to talk about this, that being that it's
What
over.
happened? What
Yes.
didn't
And
happen?
yep.
Yeah.
And we found a few good articles. And let me just say hi really quick to Kim. Thank you for moderating, and Earl and Gazer from the UK, and Optics, Rich Diana. Mwah. Jean, Kevin Hester. Hi, Kevin. Oh my God. He says, what do the Grand Dames of Doom have for us today? And yes, Lisa is here. And so tonight I was doing a little Twitch testing because we're on there. And one quick thing I wanted to say is I might do a live stream only on Twitch and test it and see how I like it. So if anybody wants to join me, I'll be letting you know when I'm going to do that because I've never done it on just the Twitch platform and I don't play games. I mean, obviously, I'm not a gamer. And hi, Nadia. And hi, Patty P. and Kameshwari K. Chris Bobbins, Shadow Star Ace. Okay, we're ready to go. Jennifer,
We are. We
give
are,
us
guys.
give us
We
the
are. So
10,000 mile
we're
view.
busting apart the COP, guys. So first up, kind of, I guess, I don't know. I'm not going to typify it. Barbados spearheads push on climate disaster financing. So there's that. And that is
Mhm.
from AP News. And
Mhm.
then we've got one from Mongo Bay. COP27
Yeah, we're
long on
doing Manga
pledges.
Bay.
Manga Bay.
Hmm.
COP27 long on pledges, short on funds for forests. Congo Basin at risk. So we'll take a look at the Congo Basin and Barbados so far.
Yep. Yep.
And then here we go. COP is a planned failure. So we're going to take a look at this article from globalclimatecompensation.org. COP is a planned failure. Why having a bad plan is worse than not having a plan. So that's interesting.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
then the last one we have, don't jump the
Yeah.
gun.
I'm not
The
jumping the
last
gun.
one we have is the World Socialist website. COP27 summit does nothing to address climate change. So there,
Mm-hmm.
guys, is
All
what
right.
we have tonight.
Oh, and guess what? We have Joe Nagy with us. He is the founder of Climate Rebellion here. Great green ladies, keep on rocking in the green world. Keep doing our green Mother Earth proud. Well, welcome, Pre- Protectorian. Nice to see you, Joe. Of course, I've seen you around everywhere and in our travels. So, all right, and Allison Frank, hello. I made a little video, of course, and it's not an intermission one. It's going to bring us into the first article. I love Mia Motley from Barbados. And now I want to go to Barbados. So when Jennifer and I go on our big trip that, who knows, right? We're going to go to Barbados when we come back from
Oh, yes.
freezing in the
Our,
Arctic.
our double round the world trip taking in Antarctica, the Arctic, Barbados, Svalbard,
Yeah.
Europe, Africa.
I,
Yeah,
th-
it's all
I,
going
th-
to
I
happen, guys. All
yeah,
going to happen.
we're saving our carbon footprint credits up so that we can do this. And of course, guys, we're going to ask you for the money. Oh God, no.
Don't believe it.
No, we wouldn't do that. If we're going to go on any trip, we're going to try to do a trip together. And before collapse, before the
Before
shit
we
hits the
can.
fan. Yeah.
Before we can.
Although we're already there. So look, Twitter's on and Twitch is on. That's pretty good. So everybody's all these live stream different venues. It's kind of cool. I like it. I really
Awesome.
like it. Yeah,
So
I'm
we're
glad.
we're 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 tri-streaming? Is that what we're doing tonight,
We
Sandy?
no quad streaming.
Quad streaming? Holy cow, I can't
We
believe
stream
it.
to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. And I've been doing this for a while. We've been streaming four different streams for about 4 or 5 months. And well, you never know. We're not monetized, but getting out there, it's work, to get out there. But I'm lazy, and it's really hard for me to sit here. And
I don't think you're very lazy at all,
Jennifer. I could sit here 8 hours a day and work this like a job, but I am disabled. I could never do it. That's why I'm not working, and it hurts just to sit. So I have a whole system, guys. Whole system. I can do things on my laptop, laying in the living room, and then it all comes in here. Technology is great for some things. I mean, I'm sorry, but it is.
You know what, Sandy? What we didn't discuss is who's going to do what, when, where, how.
Okay, I'm going to do the Barbados article. You're going to do the Manga Bay article. We might tag team the third one, the planned failure, and you'll do the last one, bringing up the rear.
Sounds good.
With the Socialists. She's going to bring up the rear with the Socialists. All right. So, Obsolete Optics said we should go to Rockfin and Callan. And then there's Mastodon. So there's all kinds of new options out there. But, the more you do, the more money it costs. And I need help. I mean, Jennifer and I can't do it. We would have to have assistant. And Poppy Davis is now doing our Facebook page with Jonathan O. And I hope that's doing well. And Jean's asking me would a standing desk might not help me, because I don't know if I could stand up that long. My daughter says there's absolutely nothing on the planet that's going to help me. All right. So anyway, let us play the video I put together with my beloved Mia Motley, and we'll be back. So don't leave. Okay.
1.5 to stay alive cannot be that mantra. And I take no pride in being associated with having to repeat it over and over and over. Not just to come here and make promises, but to deliver on them and to make a definable difference in the lives of the people who we have a responsibility to serve, seems still not to be capable of being produced. I ask us how many more and how much more must happen. And I say so because there is no simplicity in it. We get it. I come from a small island state that has high ambition, but that is not able to deliver on that high ambition because the global industrial strategy that we have has fault lines in it. When you ask us to deal with financing of net zero, people forget that we're already highly indebted countries, most island states. Why? Because we've been carrying the cost of climate for a while now. And we're carrying the cost of the G7, formerly G8 countries' industrialization on our balance sheets, and it's wrong. And nobody's making the room to ensure that we get access to grants. We can't borrow if we have no fiscal space easily, and the cost of borrowing is also prohibitive. So that what we've said, look, we need international solutions to international problems. We need an international balance sheet that takes away this debt, because when we do it, we crowd out our development and the SDGs being part of our national program. And that is our present. That's not our future. So that if we can resolve these issues in an equitable way, let's take private law. If you lived next to me and you dumped on my property, I would have a legitimate claim against you for nuisance or for tortious interference. Internationally, we have nothing to rely on other than morality. And that's why I say that the world needs global moral strategic leadership. And that's why I say that ordinary citizens ought now to demand, because while we in the islands are the canaries, you are soon going to be the victims of that. Which country is hit by a hurricane every year? Do you know? The United States of America. Every year. It's just different states. Barbados is that country where modern racism in the Americas started when the British literally settled in the 17th century. In 1661, the parliament which I lead passed the heinous slave code that spawned other slave codes here in the US, either directly mimicked or in part indirectly. And we feel that we have a moral obligation to be able to start to deconstruct the racism in all of its forms. It doesn't only come in laws that are still there, but it also comes in ways in which people undermine democracy, in ways in which people prevent people from voting, in ways in which people make judgments about people because of color or race. And we've got to work hard to deconstruct it. And we have to also recognize that when many countries became independent, there was no development compact or development package left for us to finance education, healthcare, or any of these issues. But when the slaves were emancipated, 20 million pounds was paid to the slave owners, and then by reason of a 4-year apprenticeship scheme, another 27 million pounds of free labor was given. Now, if we were to take the example of Haiti, which is perhaps the most egregious example there is, where the French government took back from Haiti, and I think New York Times did an article recently.
Very powerful, yes.
That's right. So you know that even though Haiti declared independence, they then had to pay the French government for a significant period of time a portion of their customs duties. And yet Haiti today has never recovered. And we have to ask ourselves, can we accept that the Industrial Revolution was financed by the blood, sweat, and tears and money of developing countries, and at the same time causes the climate crisis today? And it's a case of double jeopardy. So we had the wealth taken from us, and now we are facing the consequences of that wealth's impact on the Earth's climate. It's wrong, just simply wrong. 1.5 to stay alive.
So there you go. Mia Motley.
She's so inspiring. She's so cool.
She's inspiring,
Yeah.
and she's right. She's
She
right.
is right.
All right. So we're going to get right into it. I am going to read the first one, and we may have a bit of a overlap with Collapse Chronicles in Manga Bay, but that's fine because we cover everything differently. And you have to, if you're going to watch, if we do the same article, you have to watch the way he covers it compared to us. So then you get to see it, you get to hear it twice. All right. So the first one we are going to do is the AP. Okay, so I guess AP is a bit of the mainstream media, is it not? And but they spearheaded the push on climate disaster financing. And if you watched my shows on COP, I did spend quite a bit of time on the loss and damage, or a little bit of time on loss and damage. So let's get started. Sharm el-Sheikh. At the UN Climate Summit in Egypt, leaders of developing nations have repeatedly said it's not fair to expect them to cover the costs of rebuilding from devastating weather events in a warming world, plus invest in cleaner industry, while they also pay much higher interest rates on loans than rich nations. And that was like, I was surprised to when I went into that, Jennifer, to see the difference between what those nations have to pay back to these banks. Makes me sick. A plan put forward by Barbados Prime Minister Mia Motley would overhaul the way much of development lending works. It is also giving voice to developing nations struggling under rising debt from climate change. We were the ones whose blood, sweat, and tears financed the Industrial Revolution, Motley said in a scathing address. Are we now to face double jeopardy by having to pay the cost as a result of those greenhouse gases from industrialized nations? Debt has been growing in developing countries, sapping funds for education, health, and clean energy. Much of the increase in debt is some Caribbean countries, Caribbean, potato, tomato, countries is related to extreme storms, Motley said in a recent essay. The plan would make it easier for countries in the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, and Asia to get the funds to beef up defenses against warming and put off debt payments when disasters strike. Maybe get rid of them? Here's a look at the Barbados plan. I looked at it, but I'm not going to pull it up, guys. It's dubbed the Bridgerton Initiative for the island nation's capital. Advocates say it could be a pathway to unlocking $1 trillion in climate financing. It's the big idea. The plan, it calls for special loan clauses that allow for suspending the payments when a country is hit by a natural disaster or pandemic. That would immediately free up millions of dollars for governments to spend on relief and rebuilding. All right. Barbados has been a pioneer in such clauses, last month issuing its first sovereign bond with a provision allowing for payments to creditors to be deferred for up to 2 years if the country experiences a predefined natural disaster, which means pretty much everything, right, Jennifer? A predefined natural disaster.
Predefined.
Yeah. Well, that's what they have to sit
Weird way
down
to put it.
because, well, but seriously, if they don't lay out what these events are, can you imagine the banks are saying, well, shit out of luck, it wasn't laid out in our in the agreement? Seriously, that's how petty things are.
They would too. They would.
And they're so greedy. Absolutely. So the initiative, it includes a push to expand lending by international development banks such as the World Bank. The bank and its sister institution, the International Monetary Fund, were set up after the Second World War with the aim of financing reconstruction and reducing poverty. So the power of the rich, countries such as the United States and Germany, is built into the institutions. But the World Bank in particular has been criticized for being too risk aversive in lending. The Barbados plan would change risk ratings, crucially lowering interest rates. Another idea is setting up a climate mitigation trust backed by $500 billion worth of special drawing rights, dues that member countries pay to the IMF that can be drawn in times of crisis. Much of it is held by countries that don't need it. Said Avinash Prasad, Motley's special envoy for the climate. The trust could be used to borrow a further $500 billion from the private sector that could be lent out at low rates for investment in big climate mitigation infrastructure projects. Up to $5 trillion in private funding could be unlocked this way, the plan's architects say. So other proposals include a levy on fossil fuel production or an international carbon border tax. So creditworthy. Motley's plan takes aim at a central problem. Poorer nations face much steeper borrowing costs. When most wealthy countries borrow money, they pay 1% to 4% in interest, while countries in the so-called global south, they face rates of 12 to 14%, Motley told reporters. That is so, I'm sorry, can I say it? That's
Ridiculous.
fucked up.
That gets the toilet flush, I think.
Yeah,
I
that
think
gets the
that's
toilet flush. We're going to start with the toilet flush. The banks and yeah, there we go. Fucking banks. I mean, that it doesn't make sense. It's greed. It's just greed.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So she says you begin to see the disparity. The system is broken. Following World War II, she said, victorious Allied nations agreed to cap Germany's debt costs so that it could rebuild. And Britain refinanced its First World War debt, paying off the last of it only in 2014.
Can
For
I say how
2014
incredible that is? Let's read that again. Britain refinanced its
Read it.
First World War debt. First World War, guys, over 100 years ago. And it just got paid off in 2014. It took them 100 years to
It's
pay
insane.
that debt
Oh my
off.
God. Oh
That's
my
how
God,
expensive
Jennifer.
wars are. And that was a low interest loan. You know, God forbid that you start a country and you're in the southern hemisphere. You'll never pay it off.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
You know, OG Skywatch, he says, how do we know these leaders are altruistic and not just trying to grab money? Money has been paid before, like for the tsunami warning systems that were never built. Well, I would have to look into that, but let me tell you something about, I think Mia Motley. I think she is amazing. I think she is altruistic. She's not about grabbing the money, at least everything I feel about her. All right, let me continue. You know, you have to trust somebody that wants to do something right. Sometimes you just have to a little bit. I'd rather trust her than any of these big ass banks. But okay, so we are simply saying in the developing world that we also need the space to be able to finance our development in the case of climate. And wealthy nations account for 4/5 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Hanan Morsi, chief economist at the UN Economic Commission for Africa, told the Associated Press that a number of the Bridgerton initiatives ideas have also been advanced by African finance ministers. He pointed out another financial inequity. The green bond market, which helps finance environmental projects, has reached 500 billion, but only 1% reaches Africa. 1%. I mean, what is that? Okay, 1%. So Motley, Motley first unveiled her idea at COP26 meeting a year ago in Glasgow. And over the summer, she and Persaud convened economists and other academic and civil society groups to work on it. Now, she said, momentum for her ideas is gathering. French President Emmanuel Macron was the first leader from a rich country to give his backing. We need a huge financial shock of concession financing, Macron said in the speech at the opening of COP27. We must change the rules of our major institutional banks, the development banks, the IMF and the World Banks. We can't wait for the next COP. So to support Motley's plan, a group of wise minds at the highest level has been set up, tasked with drawing up climate financing solutions by spring of 2023, when the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund hold their meetings, Macron said. As climate amp disasters ratchet up the suffering, the staid international system for finance designed for an earlier age may be on the brink of change or collapse, driven by those on the front lines. So Germany, the World Bank's fourth largest shareholder, has been among those pushing for fundamental reform, including climate lending on better terms. Federal Reserve Chief Janet Yellen said multilateral development banks need to evolve and move beyond their traditional work of poverty reduction, oh my God, to tackle climate and other global challenges. All right, so I thought that was an interesting report by the AP. Yes, that everything is taken with a grain of salt, but I do believe that in her heart, this woman, she has it to change the country. I mean, it's a tourist country in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. And they make their money on tourism, and the coral reefs and the areas around Barbados are being destroyed. There was other science that I pulled up that I was going to meld in the video, but the video would have been 20 minutes, and it was good stuff. But I'll put links up for all of that. Anyway,
yeah.
I just
Sandy, I remember in was it COP26 where she gave the keynote address, this prime minister. And it was so
Yes.
inspiring. I remember it, a whole year
Mm-hmm.
later. It's amazing you can remember anything a year later.
Yeah,
But
right.
she is really very
No.
inspirational, and she's awesome. I love
And
her.
we want, sometimes you just want to feel good about something. We're so used
Mhm.
to feeling so lousy about, about so much. And so let's, if we could feel good about her, yeah, maybe, just for maybe, and we'll watch her. Well, and I've got the
Mhm.
Bridgerton report, so we will share that with you. All right, now we are moving on to the controversial Manga Bay. Okay, controversial because
Mhm.
Mr. Collapse Chronicles, and the deal was we do the Arctic, he does Manga Bay. But, because we do everything differently. All right, let's go.
Mhm.
Jen?
Yeah. Here we go, guys. COP27, long on pledges, short on funds for forests, Congo Basin at risk.
Mhm.
So there are a couple of bullets before we get into this. Number one, the world's wealthiest nations have made grand statements and offered big monetary pledges to save the world's tropical rainforests so they can continue sequestering huge amounts of carbon. That's number one. Number two, but as COP27 draws to a close, policy experts and activists agree that funding is so far too little, too slow in coming, with many pledges still unfulfilled. With major investments that are dozens, even hundreds of times bigger, tropical forests will keep disappearing at an alarming rate. Number three, the Democratic Republic of Congo, also known as the DRC, offers a case study of just how dire the situation is becoming. While some international forest preservation money is promised and available, it is insufficient to stop companies from leasing forest lands to cut timber to convert plantations and mines. So, and the last one, number four, some experts say that what is urgently needed is the rapidly upscaling of carbon markets so that healthier carbon credits that offer heftier carbon credits for keeping primary forests growing. Others point to wealthy nations who, while cutting their own primary forests, encourage poor tropical nations to conserve theirs without paying enough for protection. So, Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, the first big news of COP27 climate conference was a forest promise. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced a 26 nation partnership to conserve woodland ecosystems as one of the best ways of getting us back on track to 1.5 degrees. In his dreams,
Back on
of
track. Back.
back on track. Oh, yes, if we were on track and just sort of
Oh my
momentarily
God.
fell off track. Now
Boy.
let's get back on track.
Yeah, I wish I had a train going off a track sound.
Yeah, there you go. This forest and climate leaders partnership is meant to marshal efforts to halt and reverse forest loss and land degradation by 2030, as 145 countries pledged in the Glasgow Forest Declaration at COP26. But 1 year on, countries are lagging behind the pace needed to reach the Glasgow goals, experts said. Most worryingly, the funding pledge to fight deforestation is far enough, the funding pledge to fight deforestation is far from enough and has often failed to arrive. Quote, here at COP27, there's no promise of financing, said Ignaz Manzabanda. Oh, that's a good one. Ignaz Manzabanda, Minister of the Environment and Sustainable Development of Mai Ndobe in the Dominican Republic of
Male
Congo.
chauvinist.
Wow. With two-thirds of the country's population in poverty, villages in the rainforest have little choice but to engage in logging or charcoal production to survive, he explained. The
Mm-mm-mm.
communities are the real custodians of these resources, Bonda said. When the forest as a resource can generate revenue income, these communities will have the potential to avoid this kind of harmful development. Then these communities won't remain in the same eternal poverty. Wow. Weak COP27 cover text won't save the Congo. This week at COP27, Brazil's president elect Luiz Ignacio Lula da Silva gave hope. Gave hope.
Okay.
Yeah. That the rampart destruction of the Amazon rainforest would soon end. Promising zero deforestation and degradation by 2030. I hope so. That would be great if they could bring that to an end
Yeah.
before the whole forest.
Well, yeah. They've just got to figure out what to do with the people that need to not cut down forests and get them in a different direction to live.
Yeah, there you go. Meeting with ministers from Norway and Germany about unfreezing 500 million in the Amazon fund.
Yay. Well, they weren't going to give that shit to Bolsonaro, that's for sure.
Better not, yeah.
No, they didn't.
But while deforestation declined 6.3% globally in 2021, countries need to reduce it 10% every year from 21 to meet the Glasgow goal, according to the recent Forest Declaration assessment. COP27 offers the last opportunity for countries to set themselves up to reduce CO2 emissions from forest loss by 1 billion tons by 2025, and yearly after that to reach the Glasgow goal, a UN Environmental Program report found. One need look no further than the Congo Basin, the world's second largest rainforest, to see the seriousness of the funding problem. Forest loss there increased 5% in 2021, and many feared that its rainforest could quickly become beset on all sides by slash and burn land clearing as corporate concessions for timber plantations and cobalt and copper mining increase. Wow. This whole green swath around the center of Africa, right across the equator of the continent of Africa. It's the Congo's forest is essential for tackling both the biodiversity and the climate crisis the world faces. It possesses the largest carbon sink in the tropics, removing over 600 million tons of CO2 equivalent a year, almost 6 times more than the Amazon. So this is a potent, healthy forest. Wow, 6 times more than the Amazon. That's kind of a mind blow. That's a mind blow.
That was a mind blow.
It really is. 6
All right.
times more
We
than
have
the
to
Amazon.
put our focus on the Congo, see what's going on there.
Yeah. And together with the peat underneath much of it, it holds 8.1 billion tons of irrecoverable carbon that, if it were released, could not be recaptured in time to prevent dangerous climate impacts. Yeah, you bet.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the draft of the main COP27 cover text released this Friday morning and failed to mention, among other things, protecting the waterlogged forests and tropical peatlands like those found in the Congo. You know, we never think of tropical peatlands, but of course they're there. You know, that forest is ancient and it's been building up, and that's what happens. It's all this peat, deep peat. Quote, what we are doing here at these negotiations, if they will remove this very important element to fight against the warming of the planet, Eve Bazaiba, Deputy Prime Minister for the Environment and Sustainable Development of the Democratic Republic, told Mongo Bay and other journalists. Instead, the draft text focused on the critical role of healthy forests in climate regulation, a general term forest campaigners say has been used to justify logging. The language should instead be about preserving primary forests, said Virginia Young of the
Oh,
Australian
primary. Do we have
primary.
any primary forests left except maybe in California and out west? Maybe Vermont. Primary forests. Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Um, So, intact primary forest ecosystems absorb more carbon than logged forests or tree
Mhm.
plantations. So, it has to be have never been cut down virgin.
Yeah.
Primary,
Yeah.
virgin, same, yeah.
Hmm.
And are also more resistant to carbon releasing fires and disease, which are on the increase due to climate change.
Ugh, look at
What's
this.
needed now is to recognize that the integrity of the forest is really important, not this healthy forest rubbish, Young said. It's logging PR, it's greenwashing, you
It's
bet. And
greenwashing.
look at this palm oil plantation in the Congo. Holy moly, it's just stretching on and on and
Yeah,
on.
and it doesn't really do anything except make Americans fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ruin our cats and kill our animals. Yeah.
Importance of carbon sink. International funding measures already on the books are not near enough to stop global deforestation, and in some cases have not been paid out. In
Wow.
announcing the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership, Sunak said public donors have spent $2.67 billion of the $12 billion committed under the 2021 Glasgow Pledge to protect and restore forests. But
Wow.
so far, only Germany has committed to additional funding under the partnership, doubling its initial Glasgow contribution to 2 billion euros, slightly over 2 billion
Not the
dollars.
US.
Yeah. Talks
Mm.
to replenish the UN Green Climate Fund, which has also funded forest work, has not yet been successful. Funding to protect and restore global forests must increase by 200 times. Ooh, wow. We're not
Yeah.
talking about
Wow.
doubling. Wow. I'm looking at that. Must
Wow.
every so often I read these sentences and I'm like, what? Did I read that right?
Yes,
And
you
this
read
is
it
one of
right.
those moments. Okay, I'm going to read this one more time just in case anybody didn't get that. Funding to protect and restore global forests must increase by 200 times to 460 billion to meet the goals of the Glasgow Pledge,
Oof.
a progress report found. Not making much progress there, I guess. In
No.
DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the
Mm-hmm.
poorest countries in the world, forests will inevitably be leased for resource extraction,
Oh.
say experts,
Oh.
unless international funding make it more profitable to conserve it. In
Yeah.
July,
Pay to
country
conserve it.
announced the country announced the auction of oil and gas blocks in the rainforest, including in
Ugh.
Virunga National Park, the world's most important gorilla sanctuary.
Oh,
Oh,
this pains me.
it's so sad. It's so sad. When the U.S. climate envoy John Kerry asked the DRC president Felix Antoine Getty. Oh God, this name is going to kill me. I'm going to do it.
Shishiketi? Shishiketi.
Shish- Shishaketi, but that's just one
Yeah.
of them. Silombo, Shishaketi Silombo.
Yeah, there you
Oh
go.
yeah, it's Felix Antoine Shishaketi Silombo to
Oh,
produce the auctions at
perfect.
the free COP Kinshasa in October. Shishaketi pointed out that the U.S. was still developing oil on its own territory, according to attendee Kevin
Its
Conrad
own territory. Hmm.
of the Coalition of the Rainforest Countries. You're drilling oil in Texas. Why are you coming here and telling me not to drill? Well, he has a good point.
Well, yeah.
Shishaketi said,
But
yeah,
we could pay them not
absolutely.
to drill and give them a good life instead of. it's just a mess, because
It's
we're
a
in
mess.
the
It's a
world is in
total
a
mess.
war. There's a war that could be the resources there could be doing so much good. Oh,
While the United States has promised to invest $9 billion towards conserving global forests by 2030, so they're giving $9 billion by 2030.
that's
So
like
it's not like as extreme as it sounds.
okay. Let me see if I
Uh,
have a
That's
drop.
8
I do.
years,
Yeah,
so they're giving $1 billion a year,
this is
basically.
what they're getting. That's it. The drop in the bucket. Shit.
Yeah, and formed a working group with the DRC to protect peatlands and rainforests. It has not entered into a bilateral deal to commit funding to forest preservation in the country. When asked by Mongo Bay at COP27 if any such deal was in the works, John Kerry said, "We'll have to wait and see."
He's a little.
At COP26, the UK and the DRC also signed an agreement to drum up $500 million for the Central African Forest Initiative over the next 5 years to protect the Congo Basin. But a year later at COP27, Bazibas said none of this funding had been
Oh,
delivered. What a freaking shock. Explaining that they're still working on it.
yeah,
This is
that's
like a
the
thing. It's like,
negotiators I talk
we'll
about.
we'll have to wait and see. They're still working on it. These are almost like the
That's what they
same
did for
things, right?
2 weeks at COP is negotiate, and they left with nothing on the table because people don't want to
Crap.
pay, and it's basically just paying to give their people a worthy life without having to go in there and and decimate the forest.
Yeah, no kidding. Mm. We have the potential, we have the forest, she told Mongabay. Those polluting countries, they should put funding together, working together to preserve the environment, to save humanity. Glenn Bush of the
Save
Woodwell
humanity.
Climate
Are we gonna save humanity?
WASF. WSF. Glenn Bush of the Woodwell Climate Center, who's been advising the DRC delegation, said the scale of funding so far was crucially insufficient. With the with the conservation costing 10 to $15 per hectare, the DRC would need at least $500 million each year, not every 5 years, to effectively protect its primary forest.
Okay.
Quote, the scale of
I'm in.
funding, I'm in.
I'm
The
in.
scale of funding being pledged internationally, although it sounds like a lot, actually isn't a lot in terms of forest conservation, he said. This has to go into sustainable activities with tens of thousands of rural households. That's usually expensive. Inusa and Juboket. Oh my God. Inusa and Juboket of WWF DRC. So she's in I think it's a she, World Wildlife Fund of the
Uh-huh.
DRC,
That's
said
yep.
international funding for Congo rainforest preservation needs to be put on a stricter timeline. While the government has secured land tenure rights for local communities to more than 6 million acres, up until now, there's no implementation at the local level to stop
That's
illegal
that's
logging.
critical.
I
That's
know.
critical. They're only do it. Look at the elephant. They're
I
only
know.
doing it so they have, I mean, just like everybody, families. They have families. They want to live. They want to be able to live. And if there was a way, there has to be a way because this is what it's all for to stop it. And the rich countries can do it. Just stop
Yeah.
fucking around with war money. Stop the war.
Stop the war.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
Are carbon markets the solution? With big international pledges failing to deliver enough money to fight deforestation, some advocates see the answer in carbon markets. Countries and companies could pay tropical countries
Mm-hmm.
to avoid cutting their old trees down and count the carbon emissions avoided against their net zero goals. Funny math. But if carbon markets are to work, more transactions are urgently needed to boost prices. In its report on the Glasgow target, the UN Environment Programme said that the average price of carbon credits for deforestation emissions reductions needed to at least triple
Triple.
and reach $30 a ton for these kind of deals to regularly happen. Mm.
Triple. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The LEAF, and that's LEAF, it's an acronym, coalition, a group of public and private donors committed to buying carbon credits for avoided deforestation on voluntary carbon markets, said at COP27 it had increased its pool of money from $1 billion to
Okay.
$1.5 billion. Well, that's good news. It has to be multiplied by 10, and the payments have to get out of the door much, much faster. And that was said by Gabrielle Labat of the UN Environment Program.
How much would
So
44 billion have gotten if Elon Musk bought the Congo? Stop it. Jeez.
I have so much to say about Elon Musk.
But
None
about
of
that,
it good.
no,
Yeah.
none of it.
Put that in
All
put
right.
that in your tweet and smoke it.
Right. All right.
Some policy experts raise questions about the standards being applied on voluntary carbon markets, wondering if existing rules can adequately protect primary forests from being logged and replanted. Quote,
Oh.
there is a conscious process of blurring between forests and tree cover so you can sell carbon credits, said Suparma Lahiri of the
Mm-hmm.
Global Forest Coalition. The risk is that carbon markets will not differentiate sufficiently between natural forests able to store large amounts of carbon and plantation forests, which don't function nearly as well. The UNEP report said that voluntary carbon markets must develop mechanisms to deal with such reversals and leakage, such as when a carbon credit forest burns down, a likely
Oh
scenario as the
boy.
climate heats up, right? More forest fires. Conrad, who helped devise the UN's Red Plus standards to reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, said the voluntary markets are still so small as to be irrelevant, and companies should just buy carbon credits under the same Red Plus framework
Yeah.
that countries do, something that is meeting with some success in Brazil. It's also hard to hold the many international rainforest funding pledges accountable, he said. Only 4% of the Red Plus emission reductions have been paid for. Oh, that's not a very good. So they're still needing 96% of the pledges to be paid for. Oh
Unreal.
my
And this is
god.
such an important ecosystem. It's so important and I just feel like we're just going to lose it.
I know.
Collapse Chronicles says blah blah blah. The Congo rainforest is fuck. Greta knows it. Rhett Butler knows it. Sancho Panza knows it. Oh,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It's really
that's
sad.
okay. It
Nothing
is. It's
nothing
really
hardly
sad.
depresses me more than to see
Look at
trees
that.
dying.
Yeah, when it's just useless. And what are they going to put in the monocrops for the bullshit food that Americans eat? It's disgusting.
Well, I mean, not to bring up the topic we talked about last week, but
Yeah,
population is critical,
of
and
course.
population is going up so quickly, especially in Africa, right? So
Yeah.
remember, they said they had 6 kids on average
Hmm.
per fertile woman. That's pretty
Yep.
amazing.
Yep.
We have a
Mm.
Red Plus mechanism. 90% of the world's rainforests are already in it. They're already agreeing to monitoring. Why are you creating all these things outside the Paris Agreement? Why don't you just empower what you've already agreed to? Okay. Tree planting,
Well,
not the answer. With deforestation talks focusing on high forest, low deforestation, and that's called HFLD, in case you
okay.
wanted to know. Countries, because of their vast carbon sequestration potential, it can easily be forgotten that high income temperate nations are often degrading what little old
Wow.
growth forests they have left. In announcing Canada was joining the Forest and Climate Leader Partnership, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asked about planting 2 billion trees rather than
What?
halting his country's deforestation.
Wow.
Okay, so let's read this one more
Yeah,
time.
read it again.
So
Jeez.
much bullshit.
Oh
Okay,
my
in
God.
announcing Canada was joining the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership, so that's good, right? They're
Yeah.
joining the Forest Club.
Uh-huh.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talked about planting 2 billion trees rather than halting his country's deforestation.
Oh,
Oh no!
So, yeah,
yes.
that's right.
Wow.
The migration benefits of tree planting are negligible. That's true because it takes as we've seen, old forests, virgin
So they
forests,
still want to chop down those trees in Canada so
they
people
want
can
to
get their
they
off-grid
want to chop
cabins.
down the old forests and they just want to plant little sprouts and call it good. That's
Call
funny
it a
money
day.
right there. Call it a day,
Oh,
baby.
it
That's
hurts. I hurt
does hurt.
earlier, but now I'm hurting even more reading this.
The migration benefits of tree planting are negligible in the current decade, according to the recent Land Gap report. Oh, well. Katie Hughes, Director for International Climate Change in the UK government's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, told Mongabay that the partnership will be about reducing deforestation and restoring forests in that
In
order.
that order.
Okay, so
Mm.
that's good. But Canada has been continuing to log old growth forests in British Columbia. See, that's the thing. That's what's sucking up the carbon, and they're taking that down. And the province's forests now emit more carbon than they sequester. Oh,
Oh,
good job. That's
oh,
what that's the result of
oh my
funny. Yeah.
God. Yep.
A Manga Bay reporter recently witnessed a clear cutting in old growth forests on Vancouver Island that were slated for protection. Oh, that's so sad. So they protected it and then they
Chemistry
cut
Kate.
it down.
Chemistry Kate, are you still with us? Don't you live on Vancouver Island? Oh, she lives on Vancouver. Oh, boy.
Hundreds of
Okay.
protesters have been arrested, but government is mostly silent. Asked how it could conserve primary forests worldwide if failing to do so at home, Natural Resources Canada said in a statement that, quote, forest harvesting is not considered deforestation as
Really?
affected
No
forests
kidding.
will regenerate. What a bunch of bullshit. Oh my God. That
Oh,
statement
it
is
hurts.
technically true. It does. It's just like because it's just where we're at. It's just where we're at as a
Mm-hmm.
species. That statement is technically true. But by the time cut forests regrow, the world will likely be out of time to avoid
Oh shit.
climate disaster.
Kate said people were they've been arrested for protesting there on Vancouver Island. Holy crap. Wow.
This
Wow.
is really bad.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's bad.
this is just another WASF moment brought to you by,
Sad.
you know,
Manga
the
Bay, which is an excellent publication. Mm.
absolutely. Developed countries could lead by example. It's not all about primary tropical rainforest. The most depleted forest biome is the temperate. And the boreal forest is absolutely critical to carbon storage, Young said. We also need to protect and restore the integrity of our high carbon ecosystem, and the forests are our most high carbon ecosystem. Wow, that's very revealing, and it's also extremely, extremely sad. Extremely
Support
sad.
their journalism. They're really good. Manga
Yeah,
Bay is an excellent, excellent, excellent resource.
it
So,
is.
well, I need a cigarette, man. I don't smoke.
I do too, and I
That
don't
one,
even
I'm
smoke
telling you.
cigarettes.
Holy shit, me neither. All right, well, I guess we could move on to the next upbeat, making us feel good. You know. All right, here we go. Wait, Hoople's cat. Why store it? Why not cut emissions? The whole argument is zero sum. Yeah, good point. Good point, my friend. All right, here we go. COP is a planned failure. Henrik Nordberg, I follow him on Twitter, and he is this Substack, or is this which is this? Well, it doesn't say Medium on it. So, when having a bad plan is worse than not having any plan. Okay. So, one of the things I learned when working for the engineering company ABB was that many projects fail by design. They start from rudimentary and slightly naive understanding of the task at hand and stick to the original project plan long after it has become obvious that it will never work. The problem is that most of the people on the project are satisfied with working on the tasks that are assigned to them and have little incentive to question the overall project goals. Okay. Thus, plant failures are ultimately a management problem and are common in many large organizations. I recently came across the following helpful graphic in a report on education, a Cambridge approach to improving education, which illustrates the phenomena beautifully. So here it is. It's cycle for plant failure. I hope it's big enough. It starts at there's no problem. Number one,
There is a problem.
there is a problem. Number two, the problem is not fully analyzed. Number three, the solution is determined using partial knowledge. Number four, the solution is applied and only partially addresses the problem. And number five, the application of the solution interferes with and reconfigures the system, creating all new problems. All right, so this is a systems article. The important lesson is that having a plan is often worse than having no plan at all. The only way to break the vicious cycle is to admit failure and act accordingly. Okay. The Conference of the Parties, COP, is a perfect example of a planned failure. It keeps many people and organizations busy. Yes, that does. That's true. Retains the illusion of progress and prevents the kind of out-of-box thinking that would necessarily, be necessary to save humanity. It started out with a couple of naive assumptions. Climate change is a problem that can be fixed by technology. There is no conflict between the size of the economy and climate protection. Countries are willing to collaborate. So this is what this is like the naive assumptions that these are actually happening. Today, we know these assumptions were wrong. So we need to stop beating the dead horse and go back to the drawing board. That is currently, there's no plan for stopping climate change. We need to change that. Technology is not enough. And here he's got the graph. Jennifer, can you see it? The CO2
Yeah,
emissions.
absolutely. And I did look at this and take a look at this. So, what is tracking together? We've got CO2 emissions and we've got the current climate policies tracked against the global GDP. So, the CO2 emissions and the global GDP track perfectly. Then there's a divergence of reality, and that is because the goal is to increase the GDP by at least 2% annually, right?
Yeah.
And simultaneously, they want to have the CO2 emissions within a decade. So there is a
Whew.
mental break right here. I mean, look at this. This is like a psychotic episode on steroids. Look at this thing. Look at that thing. It's not going to happen, right? They're dreaming. This is all part of the bargaining process.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I
This is
think you
all
got
part
it.
of the techno weenie. We can fix it. If I can think about it, I can make a machine good enough to fix everything. It's all part. Honestly, Sandy, it's
Yeah.
all part of the grieving process. It's all part of the 5 stages or 6, if you believe,
Maslow.
in we
Oh,
are
that's the hierarchy of
self-correctism,
needs.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
this is
got you.
this is part of this graph
Yep.
pictorializes
Yep.
this bargaining. It really pictorializes techno weenie
The
bargaining.
bargaining.
And it
Techno-weenie bargaining.
also and it also demonstrates how there's a psychotic episode happening at the consciousness of, mass consciousness of humanity as they begin to contend with this.
Kind of.
And they're going to have to. So,
All right.
do you want
We good?
well, can I
Yep. You could do anything you want, honey.
so okay. The plot above shows global carbon dioxide emissions, right? So you're showing that graph, right? And the global
Yep.
GDP. Since 1970 and the current climate policies, which is the dashed line. So dashed line equal future, solid line equal has happened. When I show it in my climate lectures, the audience typically erupts in laughter. Yet
Yeah.
this is not a joke.
No.
The G20 nations have agreed on a global growth target of at least 2%. Simultaneously, they want to have the CO2 emissions within a decade.
Okay.
The idea is absurd. Strong decoupling does not work, as pointed out by an increasing number of researchers. How can we be sure that it does not work? Just think of the expected lifespan of most of our fossil infrastructure. Airplanes, cars, and ships are built to last 20 years or more, and power plants have an even longer lifespan. This means that most of the infrastructure that will be burning fossil fuels in 2030 is already in use today.
Yep.
Furthermore, since the world is currently running on fossil fuels and manufacturing wind turbines and photovoltaics requires energy, a massive expansion of renewables would initially lead to increased carbon emissions, right? The irony of this, the sad, tragic irony of this is inconceivable. Rapid reductions of carbon emissions can only be achieved by pulling the economic emergency brake. It does not take a PhD to understand that.
No.
Yeah?
Nope.
Of course, we need new technologies and renewable energies to create a sustainable world. However, they will not help us unless we are prepared to significantly reduce consumption. The thinking behind the current climate policies is that people will consume less as they get richer. Anyone who believes this has a pretty loose grip on reality. That is the fucking psychotic episode I'm talking about right there. That's
Oh God.
the problem. We're trying to believe two completely opposite
Yeah.
things,
Yep.
at the same time,
You
and
got that.
just like keep thinking about it until it becomes so. Make it so.
Oh boy.
You know, where's Jean-Luc Picard when you need him?
Yeah, right.
Number one, make it so. Stop extracting fossil fuels. The idea that some new technology will eventually replace fossil fuels might have been inspired by the famous quote of the former Saudi oil minister Yamanani that the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones, and the age of oil won't end because we run out of
Oh.
oil. Unfortunately, the first part of the quote is entirely wrong, as the Stone Age never ended. Today, we are using more stone than
The
during the
Stone
Stone
Age.
Age, more copper and tin than during the Bronze Age, and more iron than during the Iron Age, in addition to enormous quantities of oil, gas, coal, and other non renewable resources. However, the second part of the quote might be true. The fossil fuel age will not end because we run out of oil, but because the exhaust gases will turn our planet into an unsurvivable hellscape.
Got that right.
So, this next graph is really pretty freaking cool because it talks about influences and things and events that happened in history and kind of correlates it against the
Everybody's seeing.
Keeling graph, right? So this is
Okay.
the CO2 we all know and love, the Keeling graph of CO2 emissions since
Mm-hmm.
1958, set up in Mauna Loa. There we go. Mauna Loa,
Oh,
Hawaii, right? Keeling,
nice.
Charles Keating in 1958 set up his little thing, started sucking
Sample.
uh, air from, sampled it on a daily basis because
Mm-hmm.
Mauna Loa is one of the most pure places on the planet, being that it's effectively in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? You
Right.
get a good reading there, or at least, hopefully you still do. But look at that. It's just like we've got all these events happen. The Paris Agreement, Greta happened. Greta's kind of an event into herself. And then look at this. It's 2.57 parts per million annually that's being added. I actually think it's a little bit more than that. But basically, the thing is on a curve, going up. So there we go.
Jeez.
The figure above shows the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as measured by Scripps Institute of Oceanography. The data are publicly available, and anyone who has access to the internet and plotting program can reproduce this plot. Right? I mean,
Okay.
basically, their point is this is not fake. I think
No.
that's the
Of
blue
course not.
curve shows the weekly measurements with the oscillations corresponding to the breathing of the planet due to the shifting season. We are currently at roughly 420 parts per million, which is 50% higher than before the Industrial Revolution. Today, 1 out of 3 CO2 molecules in the atmosphere is anthropogenic, and the rate of increase is accelerating, as we said. When Professor Keeling began measuring carbon dioxide in 1958, the increase was roughly 0.85 parts per million per year. Today, the concentration is increasing 3 times faster, or by 2.57 parts per million. Nothing that we have done during the past 60 years, including the oil crisis of 1973 or the COVID-19 pandemic, has any impact on the rising
Wow.
trend. Wow.
Mm.
Yeah. The shaded red area in the plot above represents the danger zone. If we reach 450 parts per million, we can forget the Paris Agreement. However, since we are adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere at an accelerating rate, it does not matter where we put this boundary. The dash curve is a polynomial fit to the data that can be used to compute the annual increase of concentration, which is closely related to the anthropogenic emissions as shown in the plot below. So that is very interesting. I'm glad we're digging deep into this article, Sandy, because it actually has to be gone into, I think. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Good.
So let's see. This is the annual CO2 emissions, and this is the annual increase in CO2. And it is just like lined up right on this graph. Look at that. That's a good fit.
Yep.
There is a good correlation between carbon emissions and the increase of CO2 in the atmosphere. Adding 17 gigatons of CO2 to the atmosphere increases the concentration by roughly 1 part per million. Wow. Okay. So 1 part per million is 17 gigatons of CO2. Okay. I mean, it's exact, actually.
Yeah.
It's math. It's physics.
Wow.
Since we are approximately at 30 parts per million away from disaster, this gives us a carbon budget of about 510 gigatons of CO2 in your dreams. It's not going to happen. The exact value is unimportant since every ton of CO2 escaping into the atmosphere adds to the misery of humanity. The message
Probably why I don't
is
feel
simple.
good, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm just kind of taking over the show if y'all don't mind.
No, I'm saying all of this information, information does affect us. And, we're going to have to bring in somebody and do another show on support because it's heavy. And Jennifer, go for it, hon. I'm fine.
I feel compelled. So I'm going to drag you through the grittiness of it.
Okay.
So, guys, the message is simple. To prevent the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere from increasing, we need to stop extracting fossil fuels from the crust of the earth. Doing so will be difficult. Not doing so will be suicidal. Right?
Wow.
What COP misses? 30 years ago, the United States was the only global superpower. The Soviet Union had just collapsed, and the emissions from China were justly considered irrelevant. Unfortunately, the US has also made its participation in COP dependent on one condition. The American way of life is not up for negotiation, period. The starting point of COP was that preventing climate change would not involve any tough choices. Good God.
Jeez.
Have your cake and eat it too.
That's like another toilet flush. I'm telling you.
Today, we know that this was wishful thinking. See, this is all part of the grief process. This is all part of starting to contend that you have fucked this up beyond all repair and you're going down the toilet yourself. Today, we know that this was wishful thinking without any basis in reality. However, rather than admitting this fundamental flaw and stopping the project, we continued to muddle on, hoping for a miracle, just like the generals of World War I continued to send soldiers out of the trenches to walk toward the enemy machine guns. Oh, shit. That's heavy imagery. God. Continuing to insist on economic growth is just as stupid and will kill a lot more people.
It is.
So this is our mental problem. This is our mass consciousness mental problem that they're talking about. The problem is that our societies are entirely dependent on fossil fuels. Not only do they provide most of the energy we use, but they also serve as raw materials for the petrochemical industry, and they power our armies. The last point is essential. Since the beginning of the 20th century, wars have generally been won by the countries with the most advanced technology and access to enough oil to power their ships, tanks, and warplanes.
Yeah, what we're doing
This
now.
has created the ultimate vicious circle. Nations need oil to fuel their armies, and they need armies to secure their access to oil. The fact that the emblem of the United States Central Command is an eagle guarding the Persian Gulf says it all. We kill for oil, and holy shit, look at the background map. See that United States Central Command badge?
Yep.
Do you see the little talons of the, well, actually, it's the beak of the eagle. The beak of the eagle is basically in the Persian Gulf. This is like Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
and
the United
Persian
States
Gulf.
and the Saudis. I mean, we've been partners on this
Yeah.
shit for a long time.
Look at that. Saudi Arabia, it's right, their talons right into Yemen or something. Oh my God. Sorry, I just was quite fascinated with that badge.
Okay. Now I have to make it smaller.
Thus, oil has become like the ring of power in Tolkien or Wagner. It is the weapon that bestows unlimited power on its owner, but will ultimately destroy him. In a world of conflict, nobody will let go of such a weapon because the slow death from climate change seems less threatening than the risk of being defeated in a war. The
Wow.
declaration from COP27 does not mention words like oil, gas, growth, conflict, war, or refugee even once. It does, however, quote, express deep concern towards the significant financial cost associated with the loss and damage for developing countries, resulting in increasing the burden of indebtedness and impairing the realization of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. What a bunch of subterfuge. Jesus, I mean, it's really hard to understand even what they're saying. Considering that we're basically facing the apocalypse and global, extinction, that's a pretty strange and diffused
But this
way
was
to
the
say
lost
this.
and damaged COP. And we've heard Mia Motley talk about that they need the money. And she didn't use the word degrowth necessarily. But in their countries, the only thing they need to do is tourist economy. So they just need to live. They need to live. That's what this is referring to. It was the loss and damage COP, the African COP.
True. That's true. The fact that people are already dying from climate change is nowhere to be found. On the other hand, the word invest appears 8 and finance 18 times.
Because it's going to cost money to get out of the mess, which we're not going to get out of.
If any question why we died, tell them because our fathers lied. And that's a quote from Rudyard Kipling. COP is an endless cycle of planned failures. It is the wrong people trying to solve the wrong problem with the wrong approach. Oh, what a recipe of a mess of disaster that is.
It is.
Global climate compensation. Let us conduct a small thought experiment. We want to draw upon a plan to stop the destruction of our planet based on current knowledge. Obviously, first priority must be to end the extraction of fossil fuels, and the only question is how to accomplish this, as human society is almost entirely dependent on fossil fuels.
Yep.
Global direct primary energy consumption.
Look at it, terawatts.
Now,
And it shows you all of the different fuels.
1800 to 2021, so it's got 120 years on there. And it's showing the breakout of biomass, coal, which is actually on the decline, if you'll note. That kind of looks like it. Oil, which is also kind of going It's hard to say. And then what
Yeah.
have we got
Peak
here?
oil.
Gas. Nuclear is not really much, but boy, what a problem that nuclear power has caused us. Hydropower, which is negligible, wind, solar, and other renewables. I mean, they don't even really register. So you look at this thing and you can see it's really broken out between coal, oil, and gas.
Wow.
Not surprisingly.
Not surprisingly.
Here is a list of problems with the current approach. Number 1, since the power of nations depends on fossil fuels, it is meaningless to discuss voluntary commitments. Any perceived threat will immediately lead to countries reneging on their promises. This is happening right now as Europe is firing up old coal-fired power plants to compensate for the lack of Russian gas.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
It's interesting. Number 2, as we do not know how fast we can reduce fossil fuel dependence, it makes little sense to specify reduction targets because they will always be wrong. Regulating the price makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, national or regional efforts to reduce fossil fuel consumption will lead to lower prices on the world market, benefiting countries still relying on fossil fuels. Number 4, the cost of decarbonization needs to be distributed fairly. So those were the list of problems and the current approach. So 1 through 4. In other words, we need a global, foolproof way of introducing a carbon tax in such a way that poor countries do not suffer. This precisely is what global carbon compensation accomplishes. 2 things. Number 1, all fossil fuel producers pay a fee proportional to their production to a global fund. And number 2, the money from the fund is distributed to the world's nations on a per capita basis. The first part of the plan introduces a global carbon tax without loopholes in the simplest way possible. The second part can be thought of as an automatic loss and damage scheme where the amount paid to poorer countries is directly proportional to the consumption of the rich. The main advantage of the global climate compensation, as you were saying, Sandy, which makes it superior to all other plans, is that it is testable. Since the implementation is trivial, we could try with a reasonably low carbon fee and see what happens. We are currently conducting a dangerous, uncontrolled, and irreversible experiment with the Earth's biosphere. I mean, yes, we are. Would it not be better to perform a risk-free, controlled, and reversible experiment with the global economy? Any sane person knows the answer to this question.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm coming back.
I mean, that was an intense article. I'm glad that we took it to the map.
Yep. I'm
that
coming
one.
back.
Yeah, and Sandy, I'm going to propose something. Well, I guess we can get through it. We're hour 25 in.
Oh, yeah, and it'll just give me something to cut. So, which is our new thing. We're going to be cutting articles and putting pieces
Do you
up.
want
So
me to go ahead and go for this one as well, or?
the World Socialist website, it's short.
Yeah, I can do it.
And it was good. And we're giving a really well-rounded show tonight with all these different viewpoints. And all the links will be in there. And sorry, I had to take a break. I had to come get out of the room for a minute. But I'm back. And Jennifer, you want to read? That's great. My throat hurts. I'm tired. Yay!
So no, I insist. I'm in a very insistent mood tonight.
That's fine.
The World Socialist website, let's go into it. COP27 Summit does nothing to address climate change. This year's United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP27, has ended, and the world's major capitalist powers, banks, and corporations that gathered in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, again pledged to do essentially nothing to stop and reverse the ongoing climate crisis. The agreement drafted by the delegates has many similarities to the one made in Glasgow, Scotland last year. The most pressing need to end the use of fossil fuels and stop the emission of greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, into the Earth's atmosphere was relegated to a call for a limited reduction of coal power plants to phase out insufficient fossil fuel subsidiaries, a phrase which can be interpreted in many ways and is thus virtually meaningless. Even those who previously played major roles in crafting non-binding agreements were forced to comment negatively on what was produced at COP27. Lawrence Subiana, who was one of the main architects of the lauded but ultimately toothless 2015 Paris Accord, just waking you up. Just waking you up.
I'm awake.
The influence of the fossil fuel industry was found across the board, he continued. The Egyptian presidency has produced a text that clearly protects oil and gas petrostates and the fossil fuel industry. One can only imagine what next year's COP28 will yield, being held in the United Arab Emirates, which has an estimated 10% of the world's oil reserves, 20% of the world's natural gas reserves, and where oil experts can make up to 30% of the country's gross domestic product. Even the call to limit global warming to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels was almost abandoned. The limit is widely regarded by climate scientists as the point of no return in regards to the impact of climate change, beyond which the damage caused by extreme weather, rising oceans, and the destruction of habitats and the myriad of other dangers becomes qualitatively harder to reverse. The call was kept only as a result of what CNN was forced to admit was a carefully choreographed news conference by officials from the European Union that threatened to walk out. The press conference was led by EU chief Frans Timmermans, who claimed, "We do not want 1.5 Celsius to die here and today. That to us is completely unacceptable." In reality, the European powers have nothing to offer the working class. The conference was wholly overshadowed by the war in Ukraine between the US and NATO on one side and Russia on the other. The United States has been pushing for Europe, particularly Germany, to shift away from its reliance on Russian natural gas in recent years, most openly in 2018, when the then President Donald Trump sanctioned Germany for not shutting down the Russia-Germany natural gas pipeline Nord Stream 2. This pressure was amplified by bombing of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipeline in September. The criminal destruction of tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure has forced Europe to become more reliant on the U.S. natural gas imports.
I smell a conspiracy somewhere. Ooh.
Documents from the Department of Energy and the U.S. Natural gas lobbyists show that the US government and corporations were already fast tracking the infrastructure needed to increase liquefied natural gas
Oh,
imports,
jeez.
exports to the EU, and had been since at least the start of the Ukraine war.
How nice to read. Mm-mm-mm.
That's a plot, I tell you.
It's a plot. It's a plot.
I mean, unless it's just a coinky dinky,
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
don't think
I
it's a
mean, I don't like.
coinky
I'm
dinky.
not going to sit here. I mean, we are Americans. What the fuck? We know what they do. We know what our country's done. Hey, we know how they behave. But yeah.
Germany, for its part, has turned to revitalizing its coal industry. In
Ugh.
April, for example, Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck of the Green Party authorized the destruction of the town of Lützerath and the relocation of its inhabitants to allow the company RWE to mine 280 million tons of coal. So he basically just moved these poor people off their ancestral homelands so he could rake it
Yeah.
all up. And
Yep. Yep. Mine it, and it's going to be
all right,
hideous. We're going to follow what this looks like. Mm-hmm.
Habeck justified this by claiming Putin's war of aggression is forcing us to temporarily make greater use of lignite so that we save gas in electricity generation. This is painful but necessary. Okay. The supposed highlight of COP27 was that a loss and damage fund was set up to channel funds primarily from the United States and the European Union to poorer countries that have been most impacted already by climate change. It was hailed by Malwin Joseph, chair of the Alliance of Small Island States, as a win for our entire world and a show of
Small?
respect to small nations.
The
The
small
new
island states.
Well, we'll see if they ever get any money. The new fund is a token gesture at best. It is limited only to rebuilding after disaster strike and has been carefully crafted to not imply fault against those nations which output the most greenhouse gases, the US being among the highest producers of emission. Oh, I guess it would hurt their feelings or something. They must be
Oh,
concerned
jeez.
that they'll feel bad. They can't mention
Oh,
it.
poor babies. I'll feel bad. Oh, oh, jeez.
There is also no clear understanding of how money will be distributed or whether it will even reach those in need. Put another way, among the 35,000 attendees at the conference, there were reportedly more than 600 lobbyists from the
Yes,
fossil
we know
fuel
about that.
industry present, and
Mm-hmm.
up to 25% from last year, and more than all the delegates from the Pacific Island nations combined.
They were all at the trade
Whatever
show.
whatever measures that have been taken, have no doubt been carefully vetted by capitalist interests and made to ensure that
Yes, Dad.
profits from burning and poisoning Earth continue to climb. We are so fucked. Moreover, even if the loss and damage fund was given adequate resources and correct management to provide for those impacted by climate change, it does not actually address the crisis itself. It promotes the delusion, no doubt, held by many of the world leaders at COP27 that climate change can be resolved simply by throwing some changes at those who have lost their livelihoods and loved ones as a result of climate-induced devastation. It's very hard for anybody to contend with this. It's just so, yeah,
It's overwhelming. It's so big.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
It, at the same time, pretends that increasingly catastrophic events can be dealt with in the same way. The logic is that even when the worst effects of global warming emerge and drown the world's coastlines, destroy habitats, and ultimately kill billions of people, more money is the solution. The overarching danger of climate change is that at some point, perhaps when the global temperatures have risen past 1.5 degrees Celsius, perhaps after or perhaps before, Earth's climate will become decoupled from human industrial activity and evolve into a runaway
Oh.
process that cannot be contained by the current technology and could possibly end human civilization. But what does that matter when there is coal, oil, and natural gas money to be
Oh,
made?
the
And that,
money
my good people, is the crux
of
of our
everything.
entire problem. That one paragraph could be made into a mantra, right?
Mm-hmm.
The real
Mm-hmm.
lesson from COP27 is that the capitalist class, divided into rival nation states, has no solution to global warming. Climate scientists have warned governments and corporations for decades that continued carbon emissions into the atmosphere will eventually and likely more rapidly than expected produce cataclysmic convulsions that pose an existential threat to humans. In that time, these warnings have been ignored, and the working class in every country has
Mm-hmm.
suffered as climate
Absolutely.
change causes worse hurricanes, monsoons, wildfires, polar vortexes, crop destruction, and numerous other disasters around the world every year. The only
Oh.
solution is to fight by working class, an
Mm-hmm.
inherently international class, to abolish capitalism and establish production on a scientific, global, and social basis.
Yes, of course. They're
Yeah.
socialists, and that's the. It makes sense to me. Woo! Wow, that was good. Good reads, Jennifer. You saved my voice tonight. You definitely saved my voice tonight. Oh, I had the like and subscribe and all that stuff up the whole time.
Mhm.
Oh, it was definitely thank you. Thank you, thank you. Hoople says it's not the threat of extinction, but a certainty. Oh, jeez. Well, yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
no kidding.
quite a show. Quite a show.
It has
These
been.
articles were, I mean, Manga Bay, and then the writer, which who will be in the notes. He was good. I found that one. I think I was perusing Twitter actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I was perusing Twitter, and yeah, I found that one, and it was quite the
It
night.
was
Thank
good.
you,
It was good.
thank
It
you.
was really comprehensive. Thanks. I mean, this
Yes.
really sheds a light on the whole COP, right? And, I mean, we've said it. It took an hour and 40 minutes to say, but
Yeah,
it's
I'm gonna clip the article. Rich said eventually we'll have to storm the streets like the Iranians if we want real change. I think that's kind of true, but the younger people will because I'm not leaving my house. And if I do storm the streets, I'll just have to I'll be prepared. I've stormed the streets. I've stormed the streets my whole
yeah,
life. I went through
you
so many
go run
different
up and
things.
down that highway with the little Amish carriages and storm
Yeah,
the
well,
streets, Andy.
yeah,
I
I'll
want to see
storm the
it.
streets and then they'll shoot me because they already got my mailbox, assholes.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, they not because I had those political signs. My friend asked me to
Oh,
put
no.
political signs out front, so I did. I didn't think, hey, it's a free. I mean, we're freedom, right? We're about freedom. And somebody came
And
by
then
and
what happened to your
knocked.
mailbox?
They knocked it right down. They knocked it right off. Yep, they knocked it right off. And just being obnoxious, you know. And I don't care though, because it'll get fixed. Harvey will fix it. My Amish neighbor, he already knows that he has to do that for me, and I shoved it back on. I mean, I've got it back on, but I don't have the right equipment, and I just need a new piece of wood, which I do have in my basement, but I don't have the way to cut it. He's got a sawmill. Assholes did it to me. I'm not worried because I am a protected person. End of story. I can protect myself. So, you know.
Yeah.
So, Jennifer, thank you for doing all that reading. It really helped my throat.
My pleasure.
Yeah. It was great. It was great. Oh, Rich says, get a motorized wheelchair with AR-15s. No, thank you. I don't need an AR-15. I have 6 attack cats. Yeah, we've got 6 attack cats. All right, everybody. Yeah. So Dawn says the Amish neighbor might just outlive all of us. Well, the thing is, they are younger. And yeah, Sam knows them. So, Rich is on his 5th mailbox in 24 years.
It's a thing.
Yeah, maybe it's a thing. Because, yeah, okay. I feel better. I wasn't even upset about it because I'm more of the kind of person that says, yeah, okay. All right. You come get me. You know, come get me. Yeah, I'm not scared of much. What do I have to be scared of? I've lived a long life, and I've had some really scary things happen to me, and I lived through them. So, Jen, you want to give the postmortem here? Thank you, Heidi, by the way.
Yeah, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure sharing with you. I feel that these 4 articles all about the COP were really valuable to go through and to just kind of analyze them from a filter of understanding everything that we all understand who are here on this call, right? We understand the complexity because we dig into it year after year after year. I counted today, I've been digging into this nearly 16 years now.
Wow.
You know, just through pure obsession. And I'm sure that I share this with like so many people who are here on this, listening to this tonight with us, right? But, you know,
you get it. You get the meow for that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's such a complex thing. And these COP27s are so ineffective and such an offense, really such an offense in some way. I mean, I know they're trying. I know there's some good
Mia's
things.
trying. Mia Motley from
Barbados.
All that. I know.
But it just really, for me, it like underlines, you know.
You're right.
Good. You know, and I'm so happy that we covered it, you know.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't forget our little, I think you didn't forget our little deal with the like and subscribe. I lost subscribers. It's really weird when you're a tiny channel. You see it. 2 subscribers decided to hop off. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they didn't like the COP stuff. And you know how people don't like to subscribe to a lot of channels because they think for some reason it'll clog their YouTube up. Well, subscribe, God damn it. And buy me a coffee. That's great. It helps our channel. Yep, it certainly does. There are things coming up that, you know, shit happens. Thanks, Jen. I love you. I will see you next Friday. Yes, our winter hours. I'm doing every other Tuesday, depending on how I feel. And yeah, there we go. And definitely Sundays, Sunday afternoon. So I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Jennifer. We are going to listen to some groovy music to end the night, and I need to find it. All right, Jen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Peace out, guys.